There is an observation technique so direct, so precise, that when applied unconsciously, it can collapse your reality towards patterns you would never intentionally choose. This is not a mystical statement. It is a natural reaction of the energy field when your emotional frequency is misaligned at the moment of observation. What no one tells you is that, more important than what you want, is the internal state from which you look at what you want. This is where many stumble. They use affirmations, do visualizations, repeat mantras, but when the decisive moment arrives, the moment to simply look at life, the emotional filter is still fear, doubt, or resistance, and the field silently just responds. Every second, with every glance, you are imprinting a frequency onto the quantum mesh that surrounds you, and depending on the charge you carry, the collapse can be immediate. Today I'm going to show you how to break this cycle, how to pause, breathe, and consciously choose the filter through which you will observe your reality. But before we continue, a real and necessary warning. If you apply this unconsciously, if you observe from fear or from need, the effect can be exactly the opposite of what you want. And that's why this technique carries the name it does. Not because it's mystical or forbidden, but because it requires vibrational responsibility before being used. If you're ready to look at reality from a place that perhaps you've never accessed before, then stay with me. Because from now on, what you observe starts observing you back. Most people still believe that only major actions or intense thoughts can generate real changes in the energy field. There is a collective illusion that the universe only responds to extreme moments of emotion or to long manifestation practices. But the truth is that every small act of conscious observation carries within it the power to alter the invisible structure that sustains your reality. There is no neutral observation. Even the quietest, most discreet gaze carries a vibrational signature. Every time you direct your attention to something, the field around you responds, not metaphorically, but in real terms of resonance, frequency adjustment, and quantum reorganization. And what few realize is that, depending on the emotional intensity with which you observe, this response can be almost immediate. This phenomenon is what many call zero time lag. The interval between what you feel and what the field returns can be so short that it seems like coincidence, but it's not. These are the invisible effects of a vibrational feedback system that is operating all the time. The field doesn't wait for you to decide to change. It reacts to what you're emitting right now. Maybe you've already experienced this. A moment of anger that minutes later turned into a misunderstanding, a small accident, or an unexpected argument. Or perhaps an instant of such pure gratitude that it brought a message, a meeting, or an almost instant solution. These are not isolated events. They are the direct reflection of your observation frequency at the exact moment the field received your emotional signature. What complicates things is that most people observe their own lives through unconscious filters. When they look at their bank balance, the filter is fear. When they think about a relationship, the filter is lack. When they observe their own body, the filter is judgment. And every time they look, they're sending the field a clear signal. This is what I want to perpetuate. This is what I keep choosing. The big revelation here is understanding that the energy field does not respond to your superficial intention. It doesn't move by random words or vague wishes. It responds to the emotional state with which you observe reality. And when that state is loaded with anxiety, frustration, or resistance, the universe simply does what it has always done. It amplifies. There's a detail that few understand. Even when you think you're not choosing, you are. Because the simple act of looking at a situation with a certain emotion is already a choice. It's a vibrational vote. It's a silent confirmation that you accept that frequency as yours. And that's why some people, even while applying manifestation techniques, remain stuck in the same cycles. They say they want change, but when they look at the now, the gaze still carries fear, still carries doubt, and the field, which doesn't judge, simply replicates. The idea that there's a linear time between desire and manifestation is just an illusion created for comfort. In many cases, the field's return is immediate. The energy around you is constantly in the process of adjustment. It reads your vibration in real time. It responds to the now, always to the now. When you understand this, responsibility becomes inevitable. There's no longer room for the idea that you're a victim of circumstances. The reality you live today is the echo of how you've been observing the previous days. Every glance, every unspoken thought, every repressed feeling left a mark, and these marks are shaping your tomorrow. That's why, before any technique, before any ritual, the true point of transformation begins with the simple and profound act of observing, not in a rush, not with a wandering mind, but with real presence, with the courage to feel what is present without trying to force the field, without manipulation, just with the honest choice to adjust the filter and allow the universe to reorganize what is already ready to change. When your gaze changes, the field responds, and sometimes the response comes even before you realize you've asked. There is a silent mistake, almost invisible, that most people make when trying to use conscious observation to change their reality. A mistake that doesn't happen due to lack of intention, but due to lack of real emotional presence. The problem is not in what people affirm, nor in what they visualize, nor in the words they repeat aloud. The real mismatch happens in the gap between what they say they want and the emotional state they carry while observing life. Maybe you've experienced this. You close your eyes, make a positive affirmation, try to visualize a better future, mentally project a different reality, but as soon as you open your eyes, when you look at the now, what dominates is the old emotion, a silent background of doubt, an invisible weight of fear, a subtle resistance disguised as rationality, but which is actually just the echo of old emotional patterns. And the universe, this invisible field that never judges and only responds, doesn't react to what you say, but to what you feel while observing. There's a phrase that sums up this paradox exactly. The universe doesn't respond to what you affirm. It responds to how you observe while affirming. This is the trap that keeps thousands of people stuck in cycles of frustration. They do everything right in theory. They read books about manifestation, watch motivational videos, create vision boards, but at the most decisive moment, the moment of observation, they are still carrying the vibration of the problem. And the field, obedient, simply delivers more of the same. The mistake is not in the desire, nor in the practice, but in the emotional frequency that accompanies the gaze. When you desire prosperity but observe your bank account with fear, you are affirming to the field that fear is your truth. When you desire a harmonious relationship but observe your partner with distrust, you are telling the universe that distrust is what you want to keep active. When you desire health but observe your own body with rejection, the vibrational message is clear: resistance. This is why many people feel like they are self-sabotaging, even without understanding how. It's not conscious sabotage, it's an unconscious emotional program that still controls how they look at the world. This is where the repetition cycle gains strength, because the more you observe from fear, the more situations the field manifests that reinforce that fear. The more you observe from lack, the more the universe collapses realities that confirm that lack. And little by little, the gaze grows tired, hope diminishes, and the person begins to believe that nothing works for them. But the problem was never the technique, nor the universe, nor life. The problem has always been the internal state with which you've been looking at everything around you. Notice the subtlety. It's not about stopping your desire. It's not about pretending everything's fine when it's not. It's about honestly recognizing what emotion you're allowing to occupy the center of your observation right now. Because at every moment, the field is silently asking, what is your frequency now? What is the emotional filter through which you're looking at me? If there's one truth that can completely change the way you interact with reality, it's this: life doesn't respond to what you think you deserve. It responds to what you observe with emotional intensity. And the good news is that this can be reprogrammed, not forcefully, but through conscious and repeated choices to change the state before looking. Now that you understand the real impact of observation and how much your emotional state shapes the field's response, it's time to reveal what lies behind the technique that many call forbidden. Not because there's some hidden mystery, but because it demands a level of emotional responsibility that few are willing to take on. The mechanism behind this technique is simple, but deeply transformative. It all starts with what I call the moment of absolute pause. It's that instant when you interrupt the automatic flow of the mind, when you choose, with full presence, to stop before reacting. It's not just any pause, it's an energetic break in unconscious repetition, a space you create between the external stimulus and your internal response. At this moment, something subtle and powerful happens. The field, which until then had been receiving chaotic impulses based on fear, anxiety, or resistance, falls silent. It enters a state of waiting, as if the entire universe, just for a few seconds, suspended the need to react. And within this space, you have a rare opportunity to recognize the emotion that is active at the exact moment of your observation. This recognition is not intellectual. It's not about labeling emotions with words. It's about honestly feeling what is vibrating in you now. It could be anger, sadness, fear, or even that kind of anesthetized neutrality that in truth only hides accumulated resistance. The important thing here is not to judge what you feel, but to allow the emotion to reveal itself without filters. And it's precisely at this point that the psychoenergetic mechanism of the technique activates. By becoming aware of the dominant emotion, you open an internal space for the intentional choice of what I call the observation filter. This filter is nothing more than the emotional state you decide to adopt before looking again at any situation. This filter can be acceptance. It can be trust, gratitude, expansive neutrality, or any state that represents a higher frequency than the one that was dominating you before the pause. And when you choose the filter, something invisible realigns. The field, which was frozen in waiting, starts moving again. But now, based on the new frequency you've assumed, what seemed like an unsolvable problem may begin to dissolve. What was stuck may start to flow, and what was invisible may finally reveal itself. This is the real power of the technique. It's not about controlling the outcome. It's about changing the internal state before observation, because what the field collapses, always, comes from the state of the observer. If you feel that this content is opening a new understanding within you, I now invite you to make a small act of presence. Like this video and write in the comments a sentence that will anchor this vibrational choice in your field. Write, "I choose to observe from consciousness." This simple gesture, when done with intention, already begins to change your emission pattern. The time has come to turn understanding into practice. Until now, you've realized that reality is not shaped only by what you desire, but mainly by the emotional state with which you observe every detail of your life. Now, I will guide you through a simple process, but profoundly impactful, that can completely change how the field responds to you. First of all, it's important that you create an internal space of presence. This is not the kind of technique you do automatically, between one appointment and another, or while your mind is distracted with other things. This is a conscious choice to interrupt the reaction cycle and access a different state of perception. The first step is to close your eyes, not as a symbolic gesture, but as a real invitation to withdraw your attention from the surface of reality. When the eyes close, the external field loses strength, and your perception begins to turn inward. At this moment, breathe deeply. Don't force your breathing. Just allow the air to enter, fill, and leave, with a naturalness that almost feels like a silent ritual. As you breathe, start asking yourself, without hurry, what is the dominant emotion in me now? Don't expect a logical answer. Just feel. It could be a tightness in the chest, a lump in the throat, a discomfort in the stomach. Let the body speak. Allow the emotion to come, without trying to change it, without running away, just recognizing what is present. This recognition is the gateway, because from here, you can make the choice that really matters, to change the emotional filter before opening your eyes again. This doesn't mean forcing an artificial state of happiness. It means, with honesty, choosing a new internal place from which you will observe what is happening outside. Perhaps the choice will be acceptance. An internal space that says, okay, this is what's here now, and I accept it. Maybe it's trust, a state that whispers, even if I don't understand everything, I trust that the field is reorganizing in my favor. Or perhaps gratitude, not because everything is resolved, but for the simple opportunity to be conscious in this exact moment. Choose the filter. Feel it. Let this new frequency establish itself in you. When you notice that the emotion has changed, even if subtly, then, and only then, open your eyes again. And when looking at the problem, at the situation, at the challenge that previously caused you tension, observe with this new state. Notice the details. But now, with the filter you chose, feel how the body reacts differently, how the mind begins to create new interpretations, how the field around you seems, silently, to start reorganizing. This is the point where the technique truly happens. Not in positive thinking, not in forcing a visualization, but in the simple and profound act of looking with a different emotional frequency. And it doesn't end there. Stay in this vibration for the next few minutes. Keep breathing consciously. If you feel the old emotion trying to return, pause again, close your eyes, and repeat the process. Because every time you do this, you are creating a new neural path and a new vibrational signature in the field. Over time, your mind will start to learn that before any observation, there is a space of choice. And it's in this space that all real transformation begins. What happens in the energy field, in the minutes following the change in your observation, is something many people notice, but few can explain. There's a subtlety in the air, a silent reorganization that starts working even before any external sign becomes visible. The first response, almost always, happens within you. It's common that in the moments right after adjusting your emotional filter, you feel a slight relief, a sense of internal space, as if the weight you were carrying on your shoulders begins to dissolve. It's not an explosion of forced happiness. It's a different kind of silence, a kind of living neutrality, where the previously dominant tension no longer occupies the center of your perception. This relief is not just psychological. It's a clear sign that your nervous system has begun to exit the hyper-alert state. The brain, which just minutes earlier was operating in reactive patterns, now begins to emit more coherent waves. Your electromagnetic field, which before was filled with emotional interference, starts to emit a more stable signal. And the universe, reading this signal in real time, begins to respond. Soon after, you may notice small changes in the environment. The behavior of people around you subtly shifts. That phone call that seemed stuck happens. An email you were waiting for arrives. A different look, an unexpected encounter, or even a change in the energetic mood of a place. These external manifestations are not random coincidences. They are reflections of the new frequency you began to emit, the moment you chose to observe with awareness. But perhaps the deepest sign happens within your own mind. Ideas start to come with more clarity. Solutions that once seemed distant start to form almost spontaneously. The problem that seemed huge is now seen from a new perspective, not because it disappeared, but because the observer, you, changed the way of looking. And it's important to understand that the field doesn't work only with immediate responses. Some denser reorganizations, involving multiple variables, will continue happening over the next hours or days. but what has already moved will not return to its previous state. The observation shift creates a point of no vibrational return. Even if you oscillate again, the field has already received a new command and begins to reconfigure the invisible lines of your reality. Maybe, over the next 24 hours, you'll notice unusual coincidences, small synchronicities, messages, or even people you haven't seen in a long time, appearing as part of a larger movement you can't control, but that is subtly conspiring in your favor. But here, a warning is necessary. The field also observes you. If in the following hours you start feeding fear again, doubt, or resistance, it will understand that this was your true vibrational state, and it will adjust again. That's why emotional consistency after applying the technique is as important as the initial moment of choosing the filter. The universe, contrary to what many think, does not operate on rewards, nor on merit. It responds to the state you maintain most frequently over time. When you understand this, the game changes. You stop desperately seeking signs and start observing your own state with more attention than any external result. If you start applying this awareness, you'll realize that life stops being a sequence of automatic reactions and becomes a subtle dance between what you feel and what the field returns. And if by chance, in the next few hours, some sign appears, something that shows you the field has already started responding, don't ignore it. Acknowledge it, thank it silently, and remain in that frequency. Up to this point, you've understood the real power of conscious observation. You've realized how the energy field reacts immediately to the emotional state with which you look at life, and perhaps you're already starting to feel the first changes. But there's a point, perhaps the most critical of this whole journey, that you need to hear with full attention. This technique, no matter how simple it seems, can become a silent trap if applied unconsciously. Because what gives it power is not the process itself, but the vibrational quality you carry while executing it. Many people, upon learning about the impact of observation, fall into the temptation of trying to manipulate the field from distorted emotional states. They apply the technique, but instead of choosing a filter of acceptance, trust, or gratitude, they do it loaded with fear, desperate need, control. They observe the problem, but behind the gaze, there's a hidden plea of urgency, an attempt to force the universe to deliver something, even before the field has time to naturally reorganize. The result is that instead of releasing the flow, the person reinforces even more the patterns they want to break, and the field, as always, simply returns the dominant vibration. It doesn't matter how many nice words you use, nor how many times you repeat the technique. If the central emotion is resistance, the cycle will repeat. That's why this technique carries the reputation of being forbidden or dangerous for those who haven't yet learned to sustain high-frequency emotional states. Not because it causes harm by itself, but because it amplifies. It accelerates. It brings to the surface what is active in your field. At the moment of observation, if what's active is fear, the collapse will bring more situations that feed that fear. If what dominates is the feeling of urgency, the universe will respond with more delays, more blocks, more confirmations that you are not in control. This is the reason why so many people give up before seeing real results. They apply the technique automatically with the wrong emotion, and when the field responds with more challenges, they conclude that the technique doesn't work, or worse, that they're being sabotaged by external forces. But the truth is that it was never the outside world. It was always the internal state, the quality of your frequency, at the exact moment of observation. This is the vibrational responsibility that many avoid taking on, because it requires more than repeating words. It demands emotional courage. It asks that you stop, breathe, feel, and only then choose the filter with which you want to look at life. And maybe you're now wondering, how do I know if I'm applying it consciously? The answer is simple, but deep. Observe your body. It always reveals your real state. If when looking at the problem, you feel your body relaxed, your breath flowing, and a sense of internal space, you're in the right state. But if what you feel is tension, hurry, or a hidden desire for the result to come immediately, maybe it's time to stop and restart the process. Remember, the technique is not a magic button to manipulate reality. It's an invitation to create internal alignment and allow the field to reorganize external conditions from your new frequency. And if there's one choice that can define everything from now on, it's this: apply with awareness, or reinforce old patterns with more strength than ever. We've reached the end of our journey, and maybe now you see more clearly that your reality was never a reflection of what you wanted, but of how you've been observing everything around you. It's not the world that holds you back. It's the internal state with which you see it. With each glance, with each breath, you are giving a new command to the field. And from today, you have a real choice: to keep feeding the old filters, or to start observing with intention, awareness, and vibrational responsibility. If this journey made sense to you, I want you to leave in the comments a phrase that will anchor this decision in your field. I am the conscious observer of my reality.